Okay, good. How many found it? Very good. That was to give you something to do while I started the stream. So anyway, Mark chapter 6. Mark chapter 6. No, but we will, if we get far enough, we will actually come to Bethsaida in our study. Roger, I was worried about you during the song service. I was gonna. No, you don't have to confess. No, it's okay. I'm for real. There's certain ones that if they're not in the service, it's really so. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you're all right, Brother Roger. I'm glad you're. That's good. Okay, Mark 6. I need to do a. Good. Last week we left off with John the Baptist and his execution in prison at the behest of his wife's daughter and a very unwise promise that Herod made. And we left off with a neat comparison, though, of everything that had been prophesied about John the Baptist in the early chapters, in the early chapter of Luke, and how it still all came to pass. And even though it would have been naturally assumed, I think, by John and by those watching John, that John's being the forerunner of Christ would have been also related to seeing the kingdom come. Uh, Everything about John that was said came to pass. And it's an encouragement to remember that even in difficult times and trying times, you know, a good question for a believer to ask, especially if Satan tempts you to get really low, is what has God not done that he promised to do? And you'd be hard pressed to find an answer to that question. Now, sometimes we are disappointed because we wish God would have done something that he didn't do. But we know tonight that the promises of God for salvation are not always accompanied by earthly blessings. Now, a lot of times they are, and giving, God often blesses giving, but we know that there's no link between getting saved and then everything on life will just be wonderful materially. That's not. Everything in heaven's going to be wonderful, but and even in some parts of the world, I was reading through one of the email feeds that I get from a ministry that puts out weekly requests primarily about Christians and Muslim nations. And I tell you what, from an earthly standpoint, there's a lot of times that when you get saved and you're living in Egypt or Lebanon or Syria or Iraq or Iran or Algeria or Morocco, you have to be prepared right away. This might be my last day in my house. This might be. And so, again, the Lord is with them. They've got the most important thing. Praise the Lord for that. But in the short term, sometimes there's a real price. And yet God always does what he promises that he will do. Now, look at verse 30, Mark 6 and verse 30. This is coming on, really picking up the narrative after Jesus had sent the 12 out to preach. Mark 6 and verse 30, and the apostles gathered themselves together unto Jesus and told him all the things, both what they had done and what they had taught. And he said unto them, Come ye yourselves apart into a desert place, and rest a while. For there were many coming and going, and they had no leisure so much as to eat. Really ministry for them. And Jesus said, there needs to be a time for you to come apart. I heard a preacher once say that if you don't occasionally come apart, you will come apart. And so it's a cold night for that type of thinking. But obviously, the Lord knew the physical limitations. Jesus, as God in a human body, knew firsthand about physical limitations. He endured things like, we read of times he was thirsty, or he was hungry, or he was tired from his journey. So he knows, and so he tells the disciples, guys, it's been busy. Let's go to a quiet place. Let's kind of get away from everything. We'll go into a desert place where nobody is, and just kind of recover and get refreshed. And verse 32, and they departed into a desert place by ship privately. Except the problem was that it didn't end up being as private as what the original plan was. Now, the Lord knew obviously what was going to happen. But in verse 33, and the people saw them departing, and many knew him and ran afoot thither out of cities, and out went them and came together unto him. The people got wind of where the Lord was headed with his disciples, and they estimated where that would be, and they got there first. And so by the time Jesus and his disciples got to a place to be apart, there was a crowd. Verse 34, and Jesus, when he came out, saw much people and was moved with compassion, sheep not having a shepherd, and he began to teach them. This is where you see on display the difference of the Lord, even in his humanity, on what probably would have been, I don't want to inject myself into the minds of the disciples, but I suppose, knowing myself, that if I had been trying to get alone, and I was trying to recover, and I was trying to recuperate, that last thing I want to see is people to minister to. I don't want that. What did I do? The other day I came home from something. I had a really short window of time to do something, and Emily started asking me a question. I said, don't ask that right now. I've got this, and I've got this, and I've got this. And so I illustrated who I just said I came home. I've got to get this done. And this is somebody coming probably. And yet the Lord, even though he was trying to disengage with his disciples, and that plan didn't necessarily materialize, the Lord sees the people and he has compassion on them. Not irritation or not annoyance, but he has compassion on them. And here's one of the very common Bible analogies for people, and it's that we're compared to sheep. And sheep, especially now in the internet age, I'm not advocating this, but it's not hard to find funny videos about things. And if you want to watch a video about sheep, I've had when I've taught before on various things, I've got a PowerPoint visual that includes a picture of a couple of sheep in the bus stop, waiting for the bus. A few years ago, when we lived in California, there's a shepherd that grazed his sheep foothills of Southern California. And once they got broken away from their flock and decided to join the roads on Interstate 15, going through the north of San Bernardino and heading on into the high desert. And then sheep without a shepherd, there's no telling what they're going to do. A lot of times they'll follow the sheep in front of them. I did see a funny video of this sheep that was bounding through the meadow, and there was a ditch on the side of the meadow, and the sheep is jumping and just bounding through, and then just lands right in the ditch. And somebody comes through and helps the sheep out of the ditch, and he takes one or two more leaps right back into the same ditch. I mean, right after he had just been helped out. And sadly, spiritually, without the Lord, people are as sheep without a shepherd. You'll hear people talk, you'll hear life cliches, you'll hear things that people that don't know any better, or at least aren't thinking clearly, will say. Someone trying to put kind of death is a sad thing. Yet out in the world, you hear people say things like, well, death is it's just part of life. It's the end. It's part of our existence. And that's not true. Death is a sin. It's not part of our life. God didn't create life to have death. God created life. Sin brought death. And again, a sheep without Christ is going to be following something. They're going to be following something. And it could be, the latest little pithy saying on Pinterest, or the latest blurb of somebody on Twitter, but really, I mean, in a very serious way, without the Lord as the good shepherd, you're a sheep. Doesn't know where to go. And there's a neat passage in 2 Peter chapter 2 where Peter reminds the believers, for ye were as sheep going astray, but now are returned to the shepherd and bishop of your souls. That's what you used to be. You weren't like everybody else. We were all like everybody else at one point. Sheep going astray, now are returned to the shepherd and bishop of your souls. And so the Lord invites the disciples to get away, but now you've got all these people here, and the Lord's heart is moved toward them, and he's got compassion toward them, and he starts teaching. Verse 35, and when the day was far spent, the disciples came unto him and said, this is a desert place, and the time is far past. Lord, it's time to wrap this meeting up. If you notice what time it is. And so we better kind of bring this thing to a conclusion. All of the planners can appreciate this verse. People that are have a time consciousness. Now there's a good balance between time consciousness and being overboard. I mean, there's two extremes. Some don't seem to have any sense of urgency about anything, and then there's some that are so rigid that just even tying their shoes at a certain time of day it's in their to-do list. So probably not. If that is you, it's not because I was spying. I just made that up. But the disciples, Lord, it's end of the day, and these people, verse 36, send them away that they may go into the country round about and into the villages, buy themselves bread. They have nothing to eat. Lord, it's not like we're nearby any markets here. There's no food. There's a big crowd of people. Day is just about over. We need to, Lord, come on, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Dismiss the crowds. Let them go. They're hungry. Verse 37, he answered and said unto them, give ye them to eat. Now, all four Gospels carry this story. This is the only performance miracle. And by performance miracle, I mean it's not It's not the resurrection. Obviously, all four gospels record the resurrection, but this is the only miracle where Jesus did a work for someone or for people, the only one miracle of that kind that is in all four gospels. There's not one other one like that. And if you compare the other gospels together, you'll know that the Lord framed this particularly to Philip in a question about, the size of the crowd and the amount of food and all of that. And, Philip is the one that came up with the estimate of about 200 penny worth of bread, a Roman penny, equivalent to about a day's wage for a common laborer. And Philip said, just for them to take a little 200 penny worth of bread, it's be a lot of money to feed this crowd. Verse 38, he saith unto them, how many loaves have ye? Go and see. And when they knew, they say 5 and 2 fishes. And he commanded them to make all sit down by companies upon the green grass, and they sat down by hundreds and by fifties. I had personally the most unusual story to tell about this verse. When I was part of a church in Buckeye, Arizona, there was a family that had started coming during vacation Bible school. And after they started coming, I set up a Bible study with the husband. And so it was one of the neat stories of ministry. We spent a few weeks going through John, and partway through about our fourth week or so, early on in the Bible study, my name is Victor. He stopped me and he said, I'd like to receive Jesus as my Savior. Just, God had gotten a hold of his heart, and just studying his word for the last few weeks. And he said, I need to receive Christ. Well, I can't remember if it was before or after that encounter, but we were having one of our Bible studies, and I think it was his brother who happened to be in the house. And he said, I've got a question. He said, that thing about Jesus feeding 5,000 people, he said, that just doesn't seem possible. It wasn't about the amount of food. He was hung up on the logistics of passing out food to a huge crowd like that. And I said, well, the Bible does say that they sat down in groups, like they divided up into groups. And he said, I guess that makes sense. And there's that detail for people like him. Just it's right there for someone to say you can't. You'd need a bachelor's degree in business administration in order to pass out food to that many people in an efficient manner. No, just sit down and divide up in groups of 50s and 100. We'll be by with your lunch. Just to sit down. 50s and 100. 50s or 100. You got okay. Good. Interesting ministry story. Verse 41, and when he had taken the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, he looked up to heaven and blessed and brake the loaves and gave them to his disciples to set before them, and the 2 fishes divided he among them all. I don't know that I know this for positive. I probably always assumed that it was the Lord's action here that set the precedent for giving thanks and asking the blessing of God for meals. And, in a world with problems and famines and terrible storms and people without, I hope we're always thankful every time we sit down, there's something there. That we have what we have to enjoy here in this country of plenty Verse 42, and they all did eat and were filled. And then here's one of the great parts of the meal. Verse 43, they took up the 12 baskets. They took up 12 baskets full of fragments and of the fishes. And whenever there's more food at the end than there was at the beginning, that's a great miracle. We've got more left than what we started with. Verse 44, and they that did eat of the loaves were about 5,000 men. One of the other gospels does make it clear that, this was a count of men. There were others, women and children and so forth. So Jesus performs this great miracle. It was a miracle of certainly, again, continued compassion. He had spiritual compassion upon them because they were a sheep without a shepherd. Now he has a physical compassion on them. And we sent some funds recently to that ministry that of that pastor that I was in contact with, and I think that's going to be wired out actually tomorrow. And it is certainly a significant thing when you can encourage someone. And he said, with a gospel witness, he said it helps people in need, and you have something to give them. And especially in a place like displacement camps in Sudan and so forth. And so the most important need of any person's life, obviously, is the spiritual need. Oftentimes, the need that we as human beings notice first and foremost is the physical need. I mean, you know when you're hungry, when you're in pain, when you're in discomfort, or when you're depressed or you're bothered. There's something, and yet obviously the greatest need of all is the spiritual need, and that is fulfilled in Christ. It's not in this passage, but interestingly, in the John passage, some of these same people that ate from this miracle followed Jesus across the sea. And the Lord knew their hearts, and he said, you're following me because you ate of the loaves and were filled. They weren't following him because they wanted to recognize him for who he was. And then Jesus reminded them, labor not for the meat that perisheth, but for the meat which endureth. Don't spend your time just going after the physical. And here the Lord had met their physical need the day before with this great feeding. But then as they continued wanting more and were looking to the Lord for more of that, Jesus said, your focus is wrong here. It's just the wrong focus. You shouldn't be coming to me just because you want another meal. There is that which endures, labor for the meat which endures. And of course, Jesus used that figuratively speaking about eternal life that is bestowed. In fact, the people there said, what work should we do that we might work the works of God? And Jesus said, this is the work of God, that you might believe on him whom the Father sent. So no, there's no task to go out and do. There's no merit to go out and earn. Here's the work, quote unquote. It's to believe on the Savior. Verse 45, and straightway he constrained his disciples to get into the ship and to go to the other side before unto, where have I seen this word before? Bethsaida. By the way, if you couldn't find it in your maps, it's okay. The maps, the words and the names of the cities in the maps are probably at about a half-point font. I understand. I get it. You need a magnifying glass probably, but there's Bethsaida right there. He sent them across while he sent the people away. Verse 46, and when he had sent them away, he departed into a mountain to pray. John 17 specifically records the words of Jesus when he prayed shortly before the crucifixion. Um, in a situation like this, the Bible doesn't record what Jesus prayed, what he prayed for. We have lots of principles of prayer, but you always notice that when Jesus takes time to pray, and if Jesus, as God and man at the same time, specifically takes time to pray, that really speaks to our need to pray in our own lives. Verse 47, and when even was come, the ship was in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land. And he saw them toiling and rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them. About the fourth watch of the night, he cometh unto them walking upon the sea, and would have passed by them. But when they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit and cried out. This is not the only time that the disciples saw the Lord and wondered perhaps if they were looking at a spirit. After Jesus rose again from the dead, he appeared to the room where they were all gathered, and they were in just stunned amazement. And he said, "Handle me, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones like I have." And so even after the resurrection, the disciples, this was another time they saw the Lord, and they mistook him for a spirit. Verse 50, for they all saw him and were troubled. And I'm not surprised if you're in the middle of a storm and you're already perhaps bothered and anxious about the storm, and then you see what looks like the form of a man walking on the water. That would be, this is not your ordinary day. I mean, you'd be troubled, you'd be afraid. What are we seeing, guys? What is this? And this troubled them. Next part of verse 50, and immediately he talked with them and saith unto them, be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And he went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased. And they were sore amazed in themselves beyond measure, and wondered. And then we get some insight into why. Now, before we read verse 52, I mean, do you ever think that if you'd been one of the disciples and you were with the Lord all the time and you saw the miracles that he did, that maybe you wouldn't be, once you know the Lord can do anything, that's nothing would be surprising. And yet they were amazed. Jesus came to them walking on the sea. Then he gets in the boat and he calms the storm. And verse 51 says that they were sore amazed beyond measure and wondered. And here's the reason, verse 52, for they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened. God gives us some special insight into the disciples' hearts. Now, there's sometimes where we can see what the disciples are thinking by their actions and some of the stories, but here in this case, God sees fit to allow this to be recorded that they had just participated in this great miracle where Jesus multiplied 5 loaves. And again, these loaves are not like when you go to Fry's or Safeway or Walmart and buy a loaf of bread and it's nicely cut, into 24 pieces. And that's not, these are like, dinner rolls, little small. It was from a boy's lunch. The Lord takes those plus 2 fish, whatever size they were, we don't know. feeds this enormous crowd. And for some reason, and we know the reason, their heart was hardened. We don't know why their heart was hardened, but it was, and that it kept the effect, it kept the outcome, if you will, of the miracle from affecting them and from moving them. It they the passage implies here, it doesn't say it in direct terms, but it implies here that they shouldn't have been that amazed. They just look what they just saw. And yet here they are. And it seems like maybe God sometimes gives us a reminder of the frailties of people. And I don't expect I would have been any different from any of these guys in the boat, except I know for sure I would have not been Peter and asked to walk on the water. I mean, I know that for sure. I have a low tolerance for risk. I've never been bungee jumping. I have no plans to go bungee jumping. If you kidnap me and make me go bungee jumping, I suppose that there's nothing I can do about that. But please don't. Lord, if it's really you, Matthew passage tells us about Peter, not the Mark passage, but the rest of them being surprised, being overwhelmed because they considered not, guys, why is this so surprising? Look what Jesus just did. Jesus just took 5 loaves and 2 fish and fed that huge crowd. Why are we surprised that he walked on the water and he calmed the storm? He can do anything. His power is limitless. The earlier passage, Mark 4, they're in the water and Jesus is sleeping and they have to wake him up because they're afraid of what might happen to him. And they failed to make the connection. If the Lord's in the boat, probably nothing's going to happen to us. We've got Jesus in the boat. What's really amazing is that when you get into chapter 8, which we will get to maybe next week, we're going to find some more spiritual amnesia on the part of the disciples. And this is one of the intriguing passages of Scripture, to watch the disciples react or not react to the 5,000 feeding and then eventually to the 4,000 feeding. And somehow the greatness of God, it's just not setting in. It's just not making the impact. And yet, I wonder how much of a commentary that is on my own life, when God has done marvelous things, exciting things, and things that obviously only he could do. And yet I'll still get discouraged. I'll still get low. I'll still wonder why the Lord hasn't. And yet at the time that God does them, wow, this is great. This is, man, that's so neat. And how God does things and the frequency of God's miracles in our lives, that's his business. It's his prerogative. They're neat when they happen. I've shared with you a few weeks ago up at the mental hospital. It was just God did something special. He just did something really neat. I was trying to leave for the day, and I couldn't make it out of the parking lot. And there was a unit I hadn't really been on thoroughly enough. And I thought, well, I mean, of course, I have clinical obsessive compulsive disorder, so this could just be, this is just me. It's just me doubting, you didn't put enough effort. I mean, you can say that after anything you do. Didn't try hard enough, didn't do this, didn't do. But I couldn't leave the parking lot. And so I thought, well, I can't go back in. I mean, I've already signed out. That means I have to go past the intake desk and sign back in and look weird, because I just left. I mean, I've been here for 2 hours or hour and a half. Now I'm going to go back in, but I couldn't leave. And so, well, okay, I better go visit that unit. So I parked the car, went back in, walked past the intake desk without signing in. The guy, I think that he was looking away or something, and I signed in on my way out the second time anyway. So I sneaked back in, and I don't know. I don't even normally do this, but I talked to two people, and then there were two others in the room that I felt like I needed to try to talk to, and they're watching a movie. I don't normally interrupt people watching a movie. Sometimes I might make a group announcement, but I thought, well, trying to ready myself for this. As I've mentioned many times, I love preaching and crowds per se. They animate me a little bit, but I'm by nature I'm a real live introvert. I just am. I'm one on one with people and things. It's, watching a movie. They don't. Okay. Hi. Pastor Matt, I'm a chaplain. Just wondered if anybody needed a word of prayer. Or, yeah, I do. Yeah, I'll go after her. Oh, okay. Comes to find out, this lady shared what sounded a whole lot like what I've got. And I was able to say, you know what, I think this is what you've got. And this is how you get some help. And this is, and someone that had I don't know, I didn't get specifics on a salvation testimony, but from what I could tell, she had a fear of the Lord and she took a relationship with God very seriously. And she was really bothered by some things. And I recognized a lot of the symptoms. And I said, did you tell this to the doctor? And the doctor needs to know. No, I didn't. I said, well, you need to. I said, do you mind if I share this with the nurse? Yeah, go ahead. And it was something that just, I don't know, the Lord just put together. It was an opportunity to minister to somebody going through something that I didn't know I had for so many years until I found out on my own. But God just put that together. I mean, I wouldn't have. He just did it, and so I mean, I would. When those kind of things happen, I don't know. You feel lifted, you feel excited, you feel like, man, that's neat to be used of God. Man, that's really neat. And I get in my humanness. I mean, I want to have that kind of feeling and those kind of neat things happen all the time. That doesn't always work the same way all the time, but because He's God and He does what He does according to the good pleasure of His own will. And so it is in humanness, in our human frailty, it is easy sometimes to act like the disciples and act like, don't you remember what God's done for you in your life over the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Don't you remember all those things that God's done? And sometimes in the moment we don't. We're kind of like these disciples. What is this? There's a man, there's somebody walking on the water. We're in the storm. Oh no. Nobody said, guys, what are you worried about? It's probably Jesus because He just fed 5,000 people with that little guy's lunch. It's probably just the Lord coming out, taking a stroll. Well, keep that spiritual amnesia in mind because the disciples are going to do it again. We'll get to chapter 8. And it's really neat to get that kind of insight where God tells us why they were sore amazed beyond measure. And to have that shared is a neat thing. Let's have take a few moments and we'll have small prayer groups tonight. And I'll just divide up the prayer groups real fast. If you don't like your group, you can go sit in the back row and pray alone if you want to. You're welcome to do that. There's no obligation. We'll make it real simple. Let's have all of the ladies who are on this side of the room can be a group. All of the ladies on this side of the room can be a group. myself and Brother Roger and Brother Phil, we're going to meet on the back corner because nobody else is going to go back there. We're going to meet in the back corner. Brother Jesse, guy in the yellow shirt, and Brother Rick. Jesse, Marty, and Rick. Continue to pray about the situation in Sudan. Take a moment or two to share some needs amongst yourselves. Anything that's pressing upon your heart, continue to pray that the gospel will go forth during this difficult time in Sudan. And let's take a few moments when you're done praying. Service is over and there's no formal ending to it, so we'll do that at this time. Light bulbs. Well, no, I told you. Wow. Last year, the time. I typed it up. I put it. Yeah. She didn't preach. You just changing seating. Yeah. I'll pray for something like that. But you and preachers, I can answer this. The things probably got to do with yeah. That's something that they might be good. We don't really have. Yeah. Well, okay. I forgot embarrassing. I forgot. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And this is the list you have to think about. Okay, that's what you were doing. What did you say? No, for real, what did you say? She's not doing it.
You're good. Very well. But even if yeah, yeah. It's all about no, I believe that we should just ratio is
I gotta sit straight. I gotta sit straight. Yeah, thank you. Okay, sure. Vein surgery, coming up. I pray that you just help them.
I didn't know this guy. Yeah, I'll show you what you got. Not the way you want to go. And I was only trying to say, oh, man. Okay. And really an opportunity to share. Citizenship with a lot of them. The third world that came out. And we'll have the illustration that even when I learned the I want to make sure I get it out. And this for the year. I couldn't like, yeah, it's very nice. Yeah, no, it took me, it didn't actually stop because my, that was in the end. I mean, that's a very big thing, but it's. That's why you got 60%. I think over the, so it's not just the testing thing. Anyway. Which is now really our teams. To me, that was especially your Lord has been going to the way. We kept going tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of those other, like this past.
Wherever they are.
Tuesday. Well.
Yeah. I had work there. It's just bad.
I don't even know that. I tried to go to talk, but. Saturday.
No, this is. This would be right.
Oh, you. You're I see. You and Saturday.
I think they were also from the VA. They think I could, because they have like, I'm waiting, signing up. What is, that's a lot of that, had three, that, you said you get your own. That's it, two places, why, they said, you get your own.
I had it too.
You know, I feel bad now, I'm older than you.
Maybe he didn't want to sit with them.
Great day for you to have that fellow CAC. I doubt that. I doubt that.
You sure, we're gonna be choose. I really will be moving now. You're out here. It's just for you. We're never. Yeah. Well, it's not what goes. I'll see you.
That is why.
Okay, all right, sorry. Okay, take care. You should get. Yeah. 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 I would. She asked me how many days I should come. Okay. And that's about it. It was ready. Just one of your great. And there's the time.
Hey.
Yeah, make somebody like something.
Do you have any changes as well? Okay.
I got you.
Because we got another one come out soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Arkansas. Yeah. It's all.
So even there's some, see, when it's in my door, and I'm right here, this is where I work, right at the moment. Real long, just like this. In the area, say, it's in person. You just feel the way. If I can do that, then, what I do, I. We're gonna do that.
Yeah.
See you already saying. Yeah, also, I was supposed to get like 3 hour restaurant this morning, instead of coming. No one.
Yeah.
Or sure does. So, later, okay, sure. Don't sorry, we're here to see us. Yeah. You do well. Salary machine, so. Yeah. Yeah. Why not clear up? I'm not never be going in way out there too. Yeah. What is it? Oh, yeah. Gotcha.
Oh, hi, Ruth. Good. Oh, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing.
You doing? Okay. I'm glad you're out and about tonight. Very good.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said I'm glad you're out and about tonight.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm hoping I can get on a regular basis.
Okay. Well,
Not me like a man. You'll fire me.
oh no, certainly not. Certainly not. Any update on Sarah?
Uh, Not to know, other than Debbie's not getting those texts all the time, middle of the night, before she'd be getting
He told me.
continual texts all night long.
Oh, Sarah would send them to Debbie.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So she must be sleeping.
Okay.
And last I heard, she liked her job. I mean, she was on,
He said, they give you the shots.
learning how to do everything.
Wow.
And she goes
So,
to
sometimes it's hard.
classes for mentally health.
Mhm. She's
Sometimes,
Yeah.
she's staying on her medication.
as far as no,
Okay. Well, if she can do that and hold a job too, and go to class, that's three important things for stability.
right. And she was wanting to drive up and get Christmas decorations, so
Oh, wow.
apparently she went to get her tree up and everything.
Wow.
Everything I've heard's been good.
Well, that's certainly good
It's
news.
encouraging.
Yeah. Good compared to a lot of,
Downhill.
yeah. Okay. Well, good. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that's going. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Ruth.
Beautiful.
Gotcha.
Oh, no, well, that's kind. They probably gets that from her mother. You really? Oh, well, nothing. Don't worry about it. pleasant, pleasant aesthetic appearance. Yeah.